And now today's message. We begin again in love. This story is from Rabbi William Silverman. A famous rabbi was missing from his place in the synagogue on the Day of Atonement. The elders went out searching for him, and they found him caring for a sick child. "Rabbi," they said, "why aren't you in the synagogue?" He said, "Do you see what I'm doing?" "But Rabbi," they said, "it is your duty to be in the synagogue praying." The rabbi said, "I am praying. Every act of kindness is a prayer that walks and moves and breathes and lives." A few days ago, Rosh Hashanah was celebrated. Rosh Hashanah is one of 4 new years in the Jewish calendar, but it is the year that marks the beginning of the 10 holy days, the days of awe, and so it is the day that is considered the most joyful of the new years. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are the days of awe, the days of self-examination, confession, making amends, and repentance. Not to relieve one's conscience, although that may very well happen, but to notice, to pay attention to the God of the Jewish faith. To understand that God will judge one's life in the coming year, and on Yom Kippur to realize that one's fate for the year has been sealed. I think it's important to remember these 10 days because Judaism of the Abrahamic traditions was the first Unitarian tradition. And we would not have our faith if it had not come out of Jewish roots, then Christian roots, and on through all its many permutations up to the present. Now the Jews have left the temple in accordance with Rosh Hashanah, but they will be back in the temple on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which is sometimes called the Day of At-One-ment. At-One-ment is another way of saying a day of unity. And Unitarianism refers to unity, the unity of the aspect of the divine, as opposed to the Trinitarian idea of something divine. This year, I believe, is year 5778 in the Jewish calendar. It puts our calendars in perspective, doesn't it? Can you imagine writing 5778 on your checks, on your letters, on your emails? It's a long, long stretch of time. There's a custom on Rosh Hashanah itself that's called Teshlich, which occurs when the sun comes down and observant Jews stand on beaches, at rivers, in their kitchens, dropping pieces of bread into the water. And as each piece of bread drops, the person dropping it is letting go of something that needs to be let go of. My daughter and I did this together several years ago in our kitchen, and it took a long time to release all the crumbs that year. After we had dropped them, we hugged and talked about forgiving each other and ourselves, about what it takes to be kind and good and real about our feelings. When we finished, we wished each other Shana Tova, a good year, and then we ate slices of apples dipped in honey to remind us of the sweetness of life. Several years ago at the Universalist homecoming at Murray Grove, which all of you know so well, Denny Davidoff was there. She was the former moderator of the UUA, and she got up to speak about her Jewish childhood. She mentioned that what disturbed her about Yom Kippur as a young Jew was that many of the people she saw at the temple on that occasion were never present the rest of the year. Something that we know from other traditions, do we not? Shall I mention them? Christmas, Easter, the other part of our long ago heritage of the Christian tradition. If you are religious, she said, you live your religion no matter what day it is. You live it every day. You come to temple for more than one service a year. The rabbi in the story that I told you at the beginning, the rabbi who was praying for the sick child, understood this. Practicing kindness is an everyday religion. Even the Dalai Lama teaches this when he says to the world, "My religion is kindness." It's not a Sunday kind of love, not a Saturday kind of love. It is a way of being and living. For us, as practicing Unitarian Universalists, this means that we remember our 7 principles when we breathe and speak and move, that our actions must manifest our core values, not just now and then, but as often as possible. We must be mindful of our thoughts and our doings with one another and with everyone who is in any way other. What does this have to do with letting go? Everything. Everything, because we are constantly challenged to respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person. If we could really do that, we would actually be loving others, letting them be people of equal value to ourselves. But how difficult that can be. How very challenging that can be. Our minds are filled with what Buddhists call monkey chatter all day long. My monkey was chatting last night for 2 hours in the middle of the night. And I had to do some deep breathing to let that monkey go somewhere else. We have endless conversations in our heads, and we complain a lot. We think about the maniac tailgating us on Route 37, the one who rushes through the tolls on the Garden State Parkway, 1 car ahead of us, practically killing us. We complain about thoughtless parents, candidates for public office, and that's all over the place now. That commentator on television that we don't agree with. I think you know what I'm talking about. How often do we find ourselves thinking and behaving as if we were so good, so superior, as if we were the only civilized people in the room, at the march, watching the game, or in the conversation? But isn't that always just a matter of opinion? And we are not alone in this. Each of us, regardless of everything else about us, struggles with the tension between what Carl Jung might call our higher and lower selves, with our shadow sides where our more self-centered thoughts and drives lie in wait, waiting to jump up. So I'm going to pose a question to you. How long has it been since you said or did something you regretted? A minute? An hour? A day? A week? A year? How long has it been since you apologized for being unkind or even cruel to someone else? These are questions worth reviewing because our bodies always store emotions that we will not acknowledge, and because the suppression of our shadow side usually leads to its sunlight appearance in a very disturbing fashion. And because suppression and repression are soul killers. Not only do we hurt ourselves, others become hurt by us. The holy days allow these spirits to air themselves and offer a way to heal ourselves. What do we as Unitarian Universalists do with our imperfections, our shortcomings, our bad boy or bad girl behaviors? Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Fred Muir admits in a book that he wrote called Heretic's Faith that the words and practice of forgiveness and confession still have meaning for him. I have to say that I told him once I didn't use the word salvation very often, and he scolded me and said, Well, you know, the word salvation does have its uses. This is what he said about forgiveness and confession. The theme of those 10 days is really compassion and transformation. Forgiveness and confession are just opportunities to examine what you've been doing with your life, a way to acknowledge what you've done and then get on with it. You dwell on it for 10 days and then it's done. It's back there and you start over again. Compassion, transformation, liberation, these are the result of those 10 holy days. And then he tells a story that I've heard many times in many different contexts. 2 monks on a pilgrimage come to a ford in a river. There they see a girl dressed in all her finery, obviously not knowing what to do since the river is high and she does not want to spoil her clothes. Without more ado, one of the monks takes her on his back, carries her across, and puts her down on dry ground on the other side. Then the monks continue on their way. But after an hour, the other monk starts complaining. Surely it is not right to touch a woman. It is against the commandments to have close contact with a woman. How could you possibly go against the rules of the monks? The monk who has carried the girl walks along silently and finally remarks, "I set her down by the river an hour ago. Why are you still carrying her?" It's a wonderful story. As Muir puts it, at a certain point you have to stop dwelling on what might have been wrong. You have to make a sincere effort to set things right that can be set right. Remembering, resolving, reconciling, confessing, and resisting are all steps in this process. Then compassion and transformation can occur, and we can move away from the way things are to the way things ought to be. Compassion and transformation. This is what living life with religious integrity is all about. Tikkun olam is the Hebrew for the transformation and healing of the world. All the rest, said Rabbi Hillel, is commentary. It sounds very easy, but we often find it difficult to admit that we have hurt one another or been hurt ourselves. We harbor grudges and misrepresent ourselves. Therapist Fritz Perls once noted that in the struggle between pride and memory, pride almost always wins. In Korea, unacknowledged hurt, hurt for which no one has ever made amends, is known as ham. It is understood as both an individual hurt and as systemic hurt. When it is an individual, it poisons personal relationships with feelings of grief and rage that are often manifested in mental illness and pathological behaviors such as addictions, unemployment, and violent crime. When it is systemic, for instance, when it's something inherent in the nature of the government of a country, as in cases of enslavement, genocide, and political oppression, it can lead to social chaos and collapse, to revolutions and multi-generational death. Harm can only be resolved with the acknowledgement of a wrong or a hurt, by the making of amends and by demonstrating sincere repentance. Unaddressed, it is ageless, and it permeates cultures from one generation right on to the next. And if you think about conflicts around the world that are ongoing, that never seem to stop, and you think about how long they've been going and what the explanations are for their existence, you will notice that they hardly ever have anything to do with what's happening right now, in this minute, in this place. They're always attached to people holding on to things from the past, and often from very far in the past. So, country singer Lyle Lovett wrote a song about forgiveness, telling us how he feels about hurt and betrayal in just one line. God forgives, he says, but I don't. That's the difference between God and me. When I heard him sing that, I thought, boy, is he cynical. But he's also very human, and he's honest. He is admitting that he is not good at forgiving people. It's not enough to just admit that you did something wrong. You have to do something with that admission. As the Koreans deeply know, something that would set things right. Forgiveness is about forgivingness, about giving something to ourselves through giving something to others. When we get to the place where we can let go of our hurt, the hurt that lies beneath our anger, then we can move forward. Sometimes we will then be able to reconcile with those who offended us, and sometimes we cannot. It's important to be able to make a distinction. Sometimes it would not be safe to get close to someone who hurt you in a very, very physical way. It wouldn't be safe to let them get close to you. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It means we are giving something obsessive away that will destroy us if we let it consume us. We are letting go. To practice our Unitarian Universalist faith, we must live its principles, not once a week or once in a while, but every day. We can be kind. We can take care of each other. On the far side of feeling or inflicting hurt lies the land of forgiveness. It requires no passport to enter, only the courage to journey into your own heart and to take the chance of being vulnerable in the presence of someone you have hurt. I am praying, said the rabbi. Every act of kindness is a prayer that walks and moves and breathes and lives. The traditional greeting on the Day of Atonement is G'mar Chatima Tova, which means, may you be sealed for a new year. May it be so for each of you this year and every year. To a good life. To a good life. And although we are not sitting in a temple, we are a faith community that can benefit tremendously from the lesson of these holy days, from taking the time out of the quotidian rounds and sitting in a place of quiet and reflection so that we can become kinder to each other and to the world when we come out of those 10 days. L'chaim, to life. And now we'll take the offering, and then we're going to celebrate the water communion.